René Merino Monroy entered the Captain General Gerardo Barrios Military School in Santa Tecla in January 1986. In June of that year, he transferred to Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, Georgia, to study to be a naval cadet and later returned to the Captain General Gerardo Barrios Military School in December 1986. During this time, El Salvador had been embroiled in the Salvadorian Civil War since October 15, 1979, which was fought between the government and various communist insurgent groups. In February of 1987, Merino transferred to the Arturo Prat Naval School in Valparaiso, Chile, where he continued his studies to be a naval officer until December of 1989 when he returned for a third time to the Captain General Gerardo Barrios Military School. He would graduate in March of 1990. Merino's first assignment was the La Union Naval Base from March of 1990 to December 1991 as a commander of the Coast Guard during the Salvadorian Civil War, which ended in January of 1992. He mostly served in administration positions for the Navy throughout the 1990s. He then served as part of El Salvador's troop contingent in the Iraq War. Between 2003 and 2009, El Salvador had 380 troops at peak strength. Most of them were airborne troops who operated with the elite Spanish Legion at Najaf. In June of 2008, Merino served as a company commander of the Cuscatalan Battalion 11th Contingent during the Iraq War. Salvadorian troops were involved in guarding convoys. The last Salvadorian troops left Iraq on June 22, 2009, although Merino remained for another month and left in February. The Salvadorian contingent of the U.S.-led force in Iraq was based primarily around the town of Kut in southeast Baghdad. Throughout their time in the war, El Salvador's troops distributed humanitarian supplies and coordinated small reconstruction projects. 5 Salvadorian troops would be killed, 4 in hostile incidents, and 1 in an accident. Over 50 were wounded in Iraq, 20 of which were wounded when operating as part of Multinational Force Iraq from May of 2004 until 2009. Following the Iraq War, Merino would hold the position of Chief of Studies at the Center for Naval Education and Instruction, be a member of the N3 Fleet Staff, Director of the Center of Naval Education and Instruction, and Chief of the Navy General Staff. In May 2019, Salvadorian President-elect Nayib Bukele announced that he would appoint Merino as Minister of Defense. Opposition came from the Nationalist Republican Alliance and the Farabundo Martin National Liberation Front political parties, which questioned Bukele's decision to choose Merino as he held the rank of Navy captain instead of being a general in the Army or an admiral in the Navy. These parties also opposed Bukele for his appointment of Merino, as he was the first president-elect to break the Salvadorian two-party system since the Salvadorian Civil War. Regardless, Merino became the first naval officer to become El Salvador's Minister of Defense. After being sworn in as Minister of Defense, Merino promised to develop a strategy to combat El Salvador's crime and gang epidemic. Merino supported Bukele's mass gang crackdown and implemented the 7-phase territorial control plan aimed at cracking down on the gangs in 2019. The 7-phase territorial control plan included preparation as Phase 1, which is self-explanatory. Phase 2 was opportunity, where young Salvadorians were given opportunities and incentives such as healthcare, education, and scholarships by the government to prevent them from joining gangs. Phase 3 was called modernization, and it included the political crisis, which is something I'll pick up on later. But Phase 3 also saw on February 18, 2020, 1,400 more soldiers mobilized to enforce the territorial control plan in response to the legislature's assembly's refusal to approve the loan from the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. Phase 4 was incursion and consisted of security forces directly entering territories with heavy gang influence where the security forces had previously found it difficult to enter or patrol. The next phase was extraction, where 200 police officers and 20,000 more soldiers were added to the crackdown. The next phase was integration, and the National Department of Integration was formed. There has also been a proposed 7th phase to the plan to add to the crackdown. During Phase 2, Bukele sought $109 million to modernize the Salvadoran military. However, the legislature was controlled by the opposition and refused to approve of the loan. On February 9, 2020, Bukele entered the legislature with 40 soldiers, invoking Article 167 of the Constitution 3 days before. On August 21st of that year, the Legislative Assembly summoned Merino to testify regarding the events of February 9, 2020. Merino testified before the Legislative Assembly for 10 hours, during which he stated that he was ordered to send in the soldiers to provide security for the extraordinary session, but he refused to say who ordered him to do so. While being questioned by the Legislative Assembly, Merino stated that his purpose was to explain the use of soldiers and not to explain Bukele's political act. So that's the story of René Merino Monroy as of March 2024, the man who implemented Bukele's gang crackdowns as Minister of Defense. Did you know about him before this video? Are there other anti-crime or anti-cartel measures that you would like for me to cover in the future? Write in the comments below, and thank you for watching.